Welcome to Lawbreakers. After hearing a lot of the positives on the game and seeing a few gameplay bits and pieces, I decided to try my luck in getting into this weekend's alpha test of the game. What do you know, it worked, I got in, and well, here's a few thoughts with some gameplay behind it. So if you're unfamiliar, Lawbreakers is another entry in the genre becoming known as the character FPS or hero shooter or whatnot, basically giving you a group of classes or heroes and then building a team around them. Obviously Overwatch currently dominates the genre, but there's plenty of other games trying to make it in. Hell, some of them even started up development before Overwatch did. And then totally screwed up their marketing, and gameplay, and visuals, and well, I'm not going to shed any tears over Gearbox's failures, let me put it that way. Lawbreakers caught my eye, however, a game trying to emphasize FPS roots and play to the arena shooters of yore. The alpha brings with it 4 classes and a single map and game mode to play around with. The game mode in question is Overcharge, a single flag, capture the flag style map in which you take a battery back to your base and charge it to 100%. Once at 100%, whichever team holds it for 20 seconds gets a point. First team to 2 points wins. The result is unsurprisingly a pretty open brawl, and this channel being primarily focused on Overwatch, I'll be using it as a yardstick for any comparisons. In Overwatch, you are generally thinking in terms of the push, the ability to group up and make something dramatic happen with your abilities and ultimates. The emphasis is on team play and dramatic, decisive moments, creating high-impact events using the tools available. In Lawbreakers, it feels a lot more arena shooter driven. The only reason to group up is to have more guns on offer rather than fully synergize, at least that's how it feels to my newbie mind, and making the game feel a lot more like Unreal Tournament than like Overwatch. This isn't necessarily, however, a bad thing. Let's briefly touch on one or two things before we dive into the meat of the gameplay. I'll do my best Total Biscuit impression and quickly highlight one major annoyance. The options menu right now is incredibly limited and the graphics as a result look like a hot mess. Visually, the game is pretty uninspiring. I'll also put the weapon models on blast, particularly the assassins. Do I really need a sword covering up the middle of my screen? I also want to touch on one of the single most annoying things I've ever seen in a UI. Why the hell is my health bar blurry? Overall, the UI could do with a lot more polish, and I don't really get why the most important thing in the game, my health, isn't crystal clear. It's an early alpha, so sure, you've got plenty of time to fix that, but being able to tinker with options, make the game look visually nicer, and improving the HUD would be very appreciated. Maybe I've been spoiled by Blizzard, but I can tell you in February 2015, Overwatch looked better than Lawbreakers does at the moment. But enough on graphics and visuals, let's talk gameplay. I spent most of my time playing 3 classes, and being fair, the majority of that on 2 classes in particular: the minigun-toting Vanguard with a rocket pack enabling high-speed mobility, and the nimble, melee-focused assassin character. I also gave the Enforcer, your sort of bread-and-butter character, a bit of a whirl, but found the gunplay on him very unsatisfying. As well as being more tied to the ground, it just didn't feel as effective or fun as the other classes. He's very clearly meant to be your Soldier 76, your Call of Duty, your Battlefield analog, the easy to get to grips with option, but I struggled to find a use for him when I could rocket boost around with a huge minigun killing people really fast. Mobility is meant to be very clearly a very large part of the game. The game even also boasts a blind fire button to shoot behind you with a single press, and the Vanguard and Assassin was certainly pretty damn great to mess around with. The Assassin in particular uses a pretty intricate grappling hook system that lets her swing around freely like Spider-Man, and some of the more experienced players were using it in really awesome ways and finding some cool paths with it. Using it on an enemy also basically ziplines you right to them and is extremely satisfying. Out of all the times I played, I found the Assassin the most fun by far. Zipping around, cutting up enemies, and just mispositioning and getting punished for it in a big way all felt pretty damn good and fun to me. I will say the momentum can feel a little bit awkward at times. I was expecting to be able to bunny hop around a lot more and conserve my speed, and perhaps there are ways of doing it, but when not using your mobility options, you absolutely can lose a lot of pace. The exception is in the 0G environments that are dotted around the map, either in the middle of the map currently on offer, or created by the Vanguard's ultimate ability. Suddenly floating around changes how you think and fight. Of particular note is that Newton's third law does come into play, so for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. Shooting in 0G generates pushback, giving you even more mobility in terms of how you zip around. The game also does feature ultimates, however these are cooldown based rather than generated and are less high impact than most of Overwatch's ultimate abilities. For example, the Vanguard's ultimate, Starfall, rockets her into her enemies and creates a large 0G bubble. While it'll mess up whatever you hit, it's by no means an instant kill. The assassin uses Frenzy, also for another example, a large AoE slice around her before giving her vision of her enemies as well as granting healing after every single kill. They're dramatic, certainly, but, well, think more Dragon Blade, less Graviton Surge, self-enhancing or damage-dealing abilities that make you a much bigger threat, rather than setting up a whole bunch of kills for big team play rewards. The final point I want to touch on is, well, to quote the lead developer, we want to be Mortal Kombat to Overwatch's Street Fighter, namely they're clearly working hard to dial up the gritty, mature quote-unquote tone. The Break of Action's Vanguard especially can't seem to go a single minute without mouthing off and swearing up a storm. In my mind it comes off a little bit try-hard in terms of trying to be too gritty, but part of me thinks it's kind of meant to. The game very much feels like a late 90s shooter in terms of aesthetics and style, but, well, part of the fun of arena shooters is having a wealth of tools and options available to you, having a bunch of different weapons that you can bounce between very rapidly, as well as contesting things like health packs and armor buffs. I'll mention now, the game uses health stations as a means of getting health back rather than packs across the map. I'll admit it feels rather unnatural to have to run to one of these to lick my wounds rather than plotting out a path around the map to grab the health pack I need. Personally, not a big fan of that system. Weapon switching also felt a bit clunky, especially on the assassin. Drawing out her secondary had a notable delay on it, which felt at odds with the fast-paced action they're going for. At the end of the day, we're looking at a very different beast than Overwatch, and they really do need to emphasize that difference. This is much more individual, much more frantic, and much less coordinated. While I enjoyed it, only having 4 classes and a single map made it feel fairly stale fairly quickly, as well as having the limited player base and, well, an absence of matchmaking. Of course, all of these limitations can be ascribed to it being the first alpha, so hey, they're playing it safe and not giving you many things to play with. Personally, I'm very curious to see what a more complete game looks like. I enjoyed myself, especially with the assassin, and it felt like I had a wide space to improve. These are good signs for a player like me who's very driven about that kind of self-improvement and learning aspect of a game. But in what's already becoming a crowded genre space, I have to wonder if Lawbreakers can make a name for itself. Playing different to Overwatch is great. Overwatch is very likely to end up as kind of a WoW 2.0, namely anyone trying to make an Overwatch killer is going to crash and burn. But in doing so, I have to wonder if the purists will like it long enough to invest time in it, or whether they'll just stick to what they're currently playing, and will fans of run and gun style gameplay just stick with, well, their Call of Duties for example. All I know is I want to see what the game looks like a little bit down the road, which is a very good sign. I'm curious, I'm interested. I've also done a little bit of digging. The game will be buy to play, although below $60, and personally I think the best thing the game can do right now is polish, add more content, and get people trying it and playing it in an extended beta period. That'll not only let them know what the game is like, but also importantly dispel any sense that the game is trying to mirror Overwatch, a comparison that they really can't live up to just yet. Thanks for watching to the end. I've been Josh, as one voice amongst many, and this was my first look into Lawbreakers. If you did get your hands on the alpha, I'd be curious to see what you think. Personally, well, I'm all for competition, especially competition that tries to set itself apart slightly. Let's just hope it's more fun and interesting than Gearbox's attempt. Toodles.